Welcome YouTube family and welcome to another video of the Kevin Strong Show. And in this video, we're going to talk about debt, the debt crisis in the United States. And we're also going to talk about the housing crisis. I'm going to show you a very scary graph concerning the housing market. A lot of people haven't showed you this graph before. I'm going to give you my little 2 cents about what I think the data is suggesting and where things are more than likely what's going to happen to the housing market in the long run. So welcome to the show. If you're new, start off by smashing that like button, comment and share because I care. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump over to the debt portion of this. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video. I'm going to try to condense it as best as I can, but I've got a lot of good information. So please hang in there with me until I get to the entire end of this presentation. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into the credit portion of this presentation here. Okay, so as you can see here, guys, this deals with credit card and auto loan delinquencies continuing to rise, notably among younger borrowers, but this is hitting all demographics throughout the United States. So as you can see here, I'm going to go down here to this part that says household debt and developments as of Q4. So this is data that was gathered or collected the last quarter of 2023. So this is really fresh data. So as you can see here, reading from left to right, we're going to start off with mortgage debt. And as you can see in the second column, the annual change in billion in the fourth quarter, it went from 329 to 12.2 trillion, right? 400% jump. Home equity line of credit went from 24 billion to almost a little bit less than $500 billion, okay, in a quarter. Debt is exploding. Student loan debt, look at this, from 6 billion to 1.6 trillion in the fourth quarter. Auto debt, we all heard or hearing about this auto debt crisis, 55 billion, and it jumps up to 1.6 trillion. Credit card debt, 143 billion to 1.1 trillion. Others. So total debt, all of this added up, we had $604 billion of all of this debt, and in a quarter it jumped up to 17 trillion. So this is something that's just exploding at a very high rate. As I said in previous video, guys, I think a lot of people have waited too long to do something about debt. The video I did, I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, I talked about that analogy about debt happening through procrastination, not taking life serious, not having a sense of urgency, creating problems that start at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you wait till 11:58, 2 minutes before midnight, and then you want policies and procedures and society to intervene in the 11th hour to reverse all of that bad debt and that poor mindset that you've developed all day long. So really sad situation. Guys who've been following me for a couple of years, you know I used to have this famous tagline by saying keep your credit score up and your debt down. I think that window is starting to close because inflation is slowly eating away at people's disposable income. And people just have a poor mindset. They don't take any accountability. And I think that's part of the problem. Speaking of accountability, we're going to slide over and watch this guy on YouTube talking about whining about how tough things are, which they are. But once again, I like to bring the clock back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't focus on the here and now. I'm the guy that says, how did you get into this situation? And how long have you been in this situation? And what have you done in the past to alleviate or mitigate yourself from being in this situation? Because it's so easy from a human standpoint, from a compassionate standpoint, to look at somebody's situation at 11:58 and not realize that this problem started at 6 o'clock in the morning. And they had ample time to reverse those problems, but they didn't. And now they want our sympathy. So let me see if I can pull this up right quick. And it's just really interesting. This guy's probably in his 40s or something like that. So he's not a young guy. So it's not a generational thing. It's just, maybe I'm just old and just don't get it. So here's this guy right here. Is work even worth it anymore? And he's going to give his little 2 cents talking about it, and you'll just be able to hear it.
In not too distant history, I feel like there are people alive who there was a time when, like, if you asked them this question, for example, if I asked my dad, you know, when he was my age, is work even worth it? I imagine he would be like, yeah. And I imagine everyone in that generation in that time would probably be like, yeah. Work may not have been the most enjoyable. You know what I mean? Work may not have been the bee's knees for everybody, but I think they would have said that work was worth it. But fast forward now, I think we have a combination of, not only do people not enjoy their job, not enjoy their work, which has probably been a staple since the Industrial Revolution, but not only is it that people don't enjoy the work, but now a lot of people are really saying, like, is it even worth it anymore? People are getting to the point where they're like, it's really not even benefiting me to get up and go to this job, and I think that's something new. When you have people working very hard at jobs they don't like and still not able to make ends meet, and they feel like they're broker at the end of the week than if they just like sat at home and collected a check or something, you know what I mean? When you have people really questioning, is it even worth it for me to get up, spend an hour or so getting ready, the hour and a half commute to work or the 45-minute commute to work, go to work, deal with these people doing this job I don't like. I only get a 30-minute lunch from 12 to 12:30, and I'm a grown-up. They tell me to get a 30-minute, then I got to deal with them people again after lunch. Then I got a 45-minute commute home. Then I'm wiped out for the evening. I don't really get any quality time. And then I got to do that 5 days a week, sometimes 6. And then when it's all said and done, I got $100 left at the end of the week. And I think that scenario is something new.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Enough of that shit. Excuse my language. Okay. So let's take a look at this, right? What's this guy saying? People don't enjoy the work. Hell, 80, 90% of people don't enjoy what they do anyway. And that hasn't changed. What's changed is the affordability crisis, because the way you can offset that psychologically, whether you grew up in the 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way up until now, is that you used to have a traditional household where one person could stay home. I got to stay politically correct here. It was the wife, okay? The husband went off to work, could pay all the bills. The wife could stay home. She was happy doing that. The salary would not only support everybody, but you can put your kids through college. So that was the benefit of actually working. Some of those jobs were very, very hard, very labor intensive. You took ownership and pride in bringing your paycheck home and being able to provide for your family, but you didn't necessarily enjoy the damn work. Hell, most people don't enjoy the work anyway, regardless how much money they make. I've got people in my family that make a hell of a lot of money, and this one individual doesn't like the work. He calls it a grind. So is it worth it? I disagree with that. There's no benefits. I disagree with that. You can't pay for anything. That goes back to what I was saying about managing your money. Because a lot of times how you feel about your job has a lot to do with how much disposable income you have. So if you mismanage your money, or you're that person, okay, that started all of this crap at 6 o'clock in the morning, procrastinated, no sense of urgency, not trying to get an emergency fund, not planning for the future, and then all of a sudden you don't like your job, you don't have an escape mechanism. There's nothing that's enjoyable. And then at some point in time, that mismanagement of money starts to creep into your personal relationship. So now you're not happy. Your significant other or your wife is not happy. You can't pay for things. And all of a sudden you start projecting your procrastination on your employer. Maybe it's time for you to do something else. Maybe it's time for you to develop another skill set. Hell, everybody was clapping, happier than a punk in the penitentiary, as my mom used to say, when the minimum wages started to go up. Those jobs were not set up for you to work for 10 or 15 years at McDonald's. Those are transitional jobs or part-time jobs. Yes, they have become a necessity just to keep shelter and food on the table. But once again, how did you get in that situation? You must examine that. So I'm not going to go on a rant about that. It's just a lot of people are not taking any accountability for why they are in that situation. So if you have a situation when you've been trying hard, you've been learning new things, you're willing to take a risk, that's something we can have a discussion about. Nobody gets on TikTok and talks about the husband and wife that dumps out their entire fucking savings and go all in on a restaurant or go in on a small business and lose everything. There's no dialogue about that. But there's the dialogue about the person who doesn't want to self-educate, who doesn't want to learn new things, who don't want to come outside of their comfort zone, expecting the employer to provide happiness for themselves and for their family. And when that's not provided, then it's the employer's fault. So you've got this shadow apathy that comes over and clouds all of the people who are trying to put everything they've saved on the line to become self-employed and be financially independent. Those people don't get any sympathy. The sympathy lies in our society with the people who are fixated on the check. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you don't control your raises and you don't control your destiny. And if you're okay with that, then don't whine with it. Or come to the other side and do something that requires you to come out of your comfort zone or take a risk. So further ado, we're not going to get into that anymore. I'm going to slide over to this graph that I promise you guys. This is a very, very, very scary graph talking about the housing index and where things are more likely to go. I'm going to comment on that and then wrap up this video because I know it's a little bit longer than when I anticipated, but I really wanted to get into that video about that gentleman, that beta male. Okay, so this is a graph that deals with average sales prices of homes sold in the United States, which is the blue. CoreLogic, or this Case-Shiller, some of you guys are familiar with him. This deals with the National Home Price Index, which is the green line. And with the Home Price Index, it basically measures like the changes in the transaction prices purchased by households. That's basically fancy what that is. And then you got the median sales price for new homes sold in the United States. As you can see, this thing goes all the way back to 1963. So why am I bringing this up and why am I calling this scary? As you can see back here from the 70s, where my cursor is, going all the way up to the 90s, all three of these lines are pretty much tightly wound. They're following the same pattern. Let me digress for 1 second. The difference between the average and the median, when you're looking at home data, you want to pretty much rely more so on the median sales price, not the average. The discernible difference between the two, for a simplistic example, the average would be, let's say you have 10 homes and 9 of them are $1 million plus, and then the 10th one's only $200,000. So you're going to take the value of all of those homes that were sold by 10, those 10 homes, and then divide by 10 and come up with an average. But that's really going to skew because all of the other 9 homes that are $1 million plus are going to significantly bring up the value of that one, let's say, that sold for $200,000 or $300,000. What the medium does is kind of like take half of the top and then half of the bottom and come at some type of medium, quote unquote, of what the home prices are. It's not an exact science, but from a statistical standpoint, in my humble opinion, it's a more accurate data point to reflect, in this example, sales prices for homes instead of going with data that talks about the average. Okay, so now that I explained that, hopefully that was pretty self-explanatory. As you can see here, all three of these lines, the red, the green, and the blue, are tightly following the same pattern. And then you start to see a separation in 2001. You get a real big separation starting in 2006. And guess what happened then? The great financial crisis. So one could say from a historical standpoint that when the median sales price for homes aka the red line, and the National Home Price Index, which measures the transaction prices purchased by households, when that line starts to separate from each other, that typically indicates a significant downturn in the housing market. Statistically speaking, if we're looking at this going back to 1963. Moving forward throughout the great financial crisis, around 2012 in aggregate is when the home market overall nationally bottomed out and started to tick up. And as you can see, which is an accurate representation of all three of these lines, all of a sudden starting to coil together in proximity and not have that much space in between them. Moving forward, the line starts to go up, and then there's another big separation in 2020 when we had the healthcare crisis. That was when you know what was supposed to hit the fan, but there was a moratorium on everything. The shit was supposed to hit the fan, but it didn't happen. Okay, and they postponed this. We've got all this government intervention that's skewing the numbers. So as you can see now at the top, the National Home Price Index and the median sales price for new homes, the green and the red line, probably has the biggest gap, even more so now than back in 2008. Now, one would surmise by looking at this, that's saying, hey, Kevin, based on your narrative and of explaining this chart, it looks like we're going to head for a significant housing crash. Maybe not. And here's why. And I know I've been a big component of saying we're going to have a big housing crash. But here's what could possibly happen. What happened in 2009, our financial system was basically getting ready to collapse. Capitalism was over in Western society. The government intervened and started injecting quantitative easing, and that propped up the market. As you can see here on this red line, median sales prices, what you see here, even in 2020 when it dipped, this is a technical analysis. Watch my mouse here. These are lower highs. The chart goes up and it goes down, but they're lower highs. Lower highs are trending up. So for this red line to come all the way down, even to where it is right here in 2020, maybe. But for those of you who are thinking this thing is going to bottom out in 2011, 2012, nominally speaking, not adjusted for inflation, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to have, in order for this red line to get all the way down here to where it was back in 2010, 2011, you're going to have a financial crisis again that's going to basically put our capitalistic society in jeopardy. That's how much of a capital meltdown, a lending meltdown is going to be required. Because like I said, we're getting lower highs. This thing may come down to maybe right here, or it does come down to backwards 2018. The point that I'm bringing to you guys, ladies and gentlemen, is that you may have to get ready for higher prices, and they're never going back to the way they used to. Think about what's happening with insurance. Think about what's happening with property taxes, skyrocketing, going up 200, 300, and 400%. What's the likelihood of home prices being here, going all the way down to 2012, not adjusted, let's say, for inflation or for nominal purposes, however you want to look at it, and then expecting homeowners insurance, property taxes to go down as well? They're not. They're not. What I think we're going to see is that I think 2022 was the peak. I think you're going to have a significant pullback, but it's not going to go down as much as people are hoping. So for those of you who are hoping for the 2% and 3% mortgages, 30-year fix, I don't see that in the immediate future. For those of you who are thinking that home prices are going to come down over 30 and 40%, you may see that in certain markets, but overall in aggregate, I don't think we're going to see a 28 or 30% drop nationally like we did in 2008, because the government doesn't want it to happen, and it will require the whole financial system to basically be in peril, to be in danger in order for that to happen. In conclusion, once again, what I think is going to happen based on that chart is that prices are going to come down. Even if they come down another 15 or 20%, that's not going to be enough when you factor in food prices are here to stay. Higher homeowners insurance is here to stay. Higher property taxes is here to stay. So you're going to get some relief, maybe 24 and 25, and then I think it's going to pop right back up. So in summary, like I said, I know this was going to be a really, really, really long video. I do apologize for this. What would I recommend? And I've shared this with a friend of mine. If you have a young family and you're thinking about the best way to create wealth through real estate, if we get a little bit of a downturn or a pullback in home prices in 24 and 25, is which I'm predicting, I think you seriously need to consider buying a multifamily home, ideally a fourplex. You're renting one and you live in one and you rent the other three out, or you live in one in a duplex and you rent the other one out. You stem the cost of rent, even though in some markets rents are going down, but I think they're going to eventually go back up. You spread that cost out with other tenants and help them basically mitigate the rising cost of homeowners insurance and property taxes. You're still creating wealth if you buy smart. And if you have young kids or children that are not in school yet, another little nugget I'm going to share with you is that, and the wife or your significant other would have to sign off on that. You say, look, honey, we're going to buy a triplex every year. Okay. And I know you don't want like the instability of not being in one place for a long time, but hear me out. If we buy, let's just say a triplex, or let's say a duplex, and you did it, let's say you had a 3-year-old or 2-year-old, say a 2-year-old, and you did it when the child turns 3, 4, and 5. Then you can tell your significant other, hey, look, we've got 3 pieces of property now. If you bought smart and you manage right, all of them are cash flowing. Yes, you're moving a lot, but it doesn't matter as much because the child is not of age to go to school full time. Then when the child is 5 years old, you can tell your significant other, hey, look, we've got 3 pieces of property. We're cash flowing X amount of dollars. This is not financial advice. I'm just giving you a hypothetical here. And then maybe that extra cash flow that you're getting from those 3 pieces of property will be a significant amount of money to be added to your current income so you can get your dream home. And then you go to your wife, this is my payoff to you for moving every year for the last 3 years. Emily now can go to school in a great neighborhood. We can establish a community with family and friends and start to build our lives. And more importantly, not only do we have the house that we want, but we have it under affordable conditions. If you don't open your mindset up to this, you may never be able to afford home ownership. And some of you might say, well, damn it, Kevin, I don't want to live next to anybody, because that's like renting. Yes, but you're creating wealth and you're creating cash flow and you're staying ahead of inflation. And if that's the worst hand that you have to be dealt, you're better off playing that hand than just staying in a rental environment where you're not accumulating any wealth at all. So that's going to do it. I do apologize for a longer video, but I hope you've got a lot of good information. Like I said, that chart is very scary. Do not get fixated on 20, 30, and 40% declines in housing. It may not happen. You may get a little dip, and that's your opportunity to jump in. And once again, if things are still tight, do not exclude looking at a multifamily purchase so you can stem the cost of rent consistently going up in your local market. This was the Kevin Strong Show. Once again, if you have not subscribed, please hit that button, like, comment, and share, because I care. And I'll see you guys in the next video.